Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 18. The hay is in the barn in a lot of fantasy leagues, with some leagues still going out there, and there's still plenty of intrigue for this weekend. 20 teams still alive for a playoff spot, so that sets up a pretty wild and fascinating slate that gets started on Saturday. We're going to break it all down here. Let's start the show. Welcome on in. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast for NFL Week 18. I'm your host, John McKechnie. That is Mario Puig. We are digging into what sets up as a pretty crazy weekend. I think when the NFL decided to expand the playoff field and expand the regular season by another game, it had a vision of something like this weekend. Like, we have a lot to get into, a lot to dig into, a lot of scenarios to sift through. But for me personally, Mario, this is as stress-free as I'm going to be for a little while, because my Baltimore Ravens don't have to play a game for 2 weeks after this one, and they're basically barely playing as it is. This weekend, I have my Lamar Jackson sunglasses shirt on. The vibes are high. Lamar's the runaway MVP for this year. Feels good. The Dolphins game last weekend, didn't see it going that way. And so, I mean, I will tone down the gloating as we get into.
Oh, we don't need to tone down the gloating. There's a lot of people that got to hear it.
They do.
It wasn't that long ago that we were having. Well, there are certain people who are going to carry this on even now, but there was a time not that long ago when you had to humor people being like, Jared Goff is better, Kirk Cousins is better, whoever, all these players, Brock Purdy, they're all better than Lamar Jackson. And it's never been about being right to a lot of those people, so it's not like they've changed their mind upon being proven wrong, but at least they have to be embarrassed to show their faces, at least while speaking such things. And now it's kind of funny to point at them.
It is. And, in any of those cases, whether it's Cousins or Purdy or Goff, none of them could have a shirt printed that is as cool as this. I mean, that's just science. That's fact.
I guess Kirk Cousins could, but him
with the chain last year was pretty good on the airplane. I enjoyed that, now that you mention it.
But I don't have any themed garb for the playoffs. I'm at the I obviously want the Ravens to pretty much run the table from here. So I know what I want to happen, and I know that wanting things, announcing your plans is a good way to hear God laugh and all of that. So I'm just trying to honestly kind of black it out in my mind, because I just kind of want to fast forward to the answer instead of having to be caught in the ups and downs that don't matter when fate eventually is at the end of it.
I'm already squatting on the dread is just it's in the back corner for now.
I'm all dread right now.
It's there. And that dread scenario is Joe Flacco and the Browns going to Baltimore in the second round. The Browns,
I'd take that over the 49ers, man. I would. I don't like Flacco, and my difference, I guess, is I'm not a Ravens fan, so I don't care about. I don't have the Browns hatred. If anything, John, I think it might be a little greedy of Ravens fans to presuppose superiority over Browns fans, having already stolen one of their teams, so in the ensuing Super Bowl. So but no, I just don't want to see all the flag waving bull crap about Brock Purdy if the 49ers win. So if the Browns have to take care of that for me, then I guess I would appreciate it of them, but rather have the Ravens win.
It'd be good for the old bankroll. I'm oddly leveraged on the Browns winning the Super Bowl, but the complaints about stealing the franchise fall on deaf ears over here. As Baltimore complicated history, Peyton Manning.
Well, that's why you're superior to Colts fans and are owed all of their riches. But I don't know. I think you maybe have a little bit more patience with the Browns. You've already conquered so much of their stuff.
It's true. It's true. They've had quite an existence since coming back to the league in 1999.
Welcome back. You get Tim Couch. This is going to go great, I'm sure.
Well, I did see probably my favorite tweet from last weekend. And I promise, folks, we'll get to the games here in a second. But my favorite tweet was from former Browns great Johnny Manziel, because a tweet from one of the Browns beat writers was like, with tonight's performance, Joe Flacco has passed Johnny Manziel for 31st on the Browns all-time passing yardage list, and Johnny just quote tweets it with some records are meant to be broken. I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Does he just kind of like go to bowling alleys and like do little promo spots and get free food and live that way, or what is he doing now? And does he have a media job or something?
He doesn't, at least not a mainstream one. I know that there was a Netflix doc about him over the summer, but I wasn't overly interested in watching
just
that.
Gaming off of dad's money still.
Apparently that like his wealth and fortune was all fabricated because he was getting so much money from boosters while he was at A&M that he had to come up with a backstory.
He lied about who his father is.
Yeah, he lied about like
no one figured
this
that
crazy
out
oral. No. Which is the craziest part, because he was like the most scrutinized player.
At that point, you're like almost got to wonder, like, what isn't this guy lying about? Is he maybe just creating a constant mirage? I don't know. Anyway, that is pretty funny, and it is pretty crazy that Flacco's already at that point. Even I assume the number was like 7 or something.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't take a ton for him to get there. It took like 4 starts, and there we have it. But let's see here. Why don't we get on to this weekend's slate of games? We'll start things out in Charm City as the Ravens playing mostly kind of a last game of the preseason type of vibe. They are 4-point home underdogs to the Pittsburgh Steelers, who do obviously have some things to play for. I will go through quickly what the Steelers have on the table. So they clinch a playoff berth if they win. They have to win, first of all. And then a Buffalo loss or a Jacksonville loss or a tie in the Houston-Indianapolis game, or then things get crazy. A Pittsburgh tie, a Jacksonville loss, a Houston-Indianapolis doesn't end in a tie. This is written confusingly on NFL.com.
Yeah, I can't follow this anymore.
Or Jacksonville losing, Denver winning, and Houston and Indianapolis having a result that is not a tie. So a lot of permutations. I think that the first 3 make the most sense. They need to win. They need Buffalo to lose, Jacksonville to lose or tie, or Houston and Indy to tie. My favorite playoff scenarios are always when a tie has to get involved in the mix, and you figure a game like the Texans and the Colts, we're not going to have that, given what's on the line for both of those teams as well. But stranger
the one
things
tie
have happened.
thing that was pretty much just the Brandon Staley case, right? Like,
yes,
it seemed impossible until Brandon Staley invented it. But yeah, so the one thing I wonder is how prepared is the Ravens' depth rotations, because if they could make their backups competitive in this game, not to say they're going to go deep in the playbook to do it or anything, but I think the Ravens might want to win this game. Not to put like Lamar or anyone truly important down as collateral, but Tyler, is it Huntley who's still there? I can't even remember.
Yes, Huntley's still there.
That might be enough. Those backups have been playing. I mean, Geno Stone, if he's got like off the bench 7 interceptions. He's got to play either way. Rock Ya-Sin's a former starter. Demarion Williams has been there a couple of years. Maybe they can pull it off. I don't know. But yeah, the Steelers, it's like you could think the Ravens want to beat them, not so much for that way they're not a threat in the playoffs, but more just kind of like, we hate you. We're coming for you and all the other teams, and expect pain basically. And I don't know. It's when you got backups who have played there a while. It's like guys like that can sometimes step in and not really notice that they're backups so much.
Yeah, I think if nothing else, it'll ugly up the game. I think that this will almost look like the inverse of the first meeting between these two teams earlier this year when, a glorified backup in Kenny Pickett was playing for the Steelers. It's sort of basically who Tyler Huntley could be or what he functions as. In this game, probably going to see a lot of Melvin Gordon.
Yeah.
Probably going to see some Tylan Wallace. We could see I know that there's some
I still believe in
incentives
Tylan Wallace. I'm ready for this, John. I've been waiting for this particular game and for like 3 years.
Right. I mean, he was sick at Oklahoma State, had the knee thing, and takes him a while to get back on track. But I mean, hey, his punt return against the Rams, if nothing else, was worth paying
Timely.
like his entire salary, essentially.
Yeah.
But I think I like the Ravens against the spread here, but I do think that the Steelers find a way to win. I would just say it's probably by a field goal, if anything.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess for me, I need guys like Pickens and I guess to a lesser extent Deontay Johnson to show up, because I feel like if they don't, that means that Rudolph kind of went in the tank, and if Rudolph goes in the tank, then I think the starter advantage in theory for the Steelers kind of just evaporates, because if your offense is as bad as if your passing is as bad as it has been at times for the Steelers, most specifically with Trubisky, you're basically not at an advantage against anyone. Like you just can't be a viable offense with quarterback play like that. So Rudolph has been an improvement, and I suppose he'll keep being an improvement. But if Pickens and Johnson don't show up in the box score, then I think the Ravens, even the backup Ravens defense, can kind of make it a coin flip game.
Yeah, I think you have that summed up correctly. And as we go through this podcast, some teams that aren't necessarily Super Bowl contenders for this year, we'll do a little temperature check on what things might look like for them next year. And in Pittsburgh's case, it's a good roster. It's not a great roster, but obviously quarterback is holding them back. They synced the first round pick into Kenny Pickett a couple of years ago. There's, we think, going to be a decent market for veteran quarterbacks this coming offseason. Do you think the Steelers get in the mix for that?
Yeah, who are we looking at exactly? Like,
in my mind's eye, I see Russell Wilson as a Steeler.
Russell Wilson, I don't know why. I feel like he's a Washington kind of pickup. It feels like destiny to me. I don't really have a justification for that. I could see the Steelers. The Steelers got to go with somebody, right? Like the Pickett thing is a joke, and they must know it by now. And that was just an ownership pick anyway. So no one really feels the need to go to bat for that pick, because no one benefits from it really. They got to get some veteran, because it is funny that they not only spent that first round pick on Kenny Pickett, but then the Tomlin effect made them like immune to tanking. Like they couldn't tank, and they kept getting these late draft picks, which they're going to get again. And it's like, you really probably should have just tanked or something. You should have said, Tomlin, ease off the gas this time. We're trying to get a little higher in the draft order. Because it's almost like Jameis Winston or somebody like that might be their best option, and clearly a big improvement over Pickett. It really truly might be enough for them to be a playoff competitor when you, again, thrown in the Tomlin factor, and if the defense hits a few picks, signings coming up. But I guess it's got to be some veteran, I suppose. I can't really think of who, but Winston or Wilson, somebody like that, I guess.
Yeah, I not to spoil things too much, but I don't think that Kirk Cousins leaves Minnesota. I think it's too good of a setup that he would be leaving. But
maybe Kyler Murray.
That's interesting on what Arizona might end up wanting to do, because they'll have a pretty draft spot.
They're going to take a quarterback. I'm more of a Kyler apologist than most, and I'm not necessarily as sold on some of these quarterbacks as some folks, but the Cardinals have to take one of them, if only for like the contract reason, and then just kind of hope they can break even on a trade with Murray to get out of that deal.
Interesting. Okay. I've kind of gone under the presupposition that they're going to ride with Kyler.
Maybe they do
in the long term.
I think he's good enough. It's just like they can. He's under control for maybe 3 more years, probably something like 2 in terms of affordable years. And if someone were to argue that, especially, Caleb Williams or Drake May were better than Murray, it's like, how are you gonna be so sure that they're wrong? But you're right. I mean, it is politically a bit more tense to go a route like Kyler than it is some guy that a team was going to try to trade anyway.
Exactly. Let's move on to Saturday night. We got a good one brewing at the Big Oil Drum, as Chris Berman would call it, at Lucas Oil Stadium. We have the Indianapolis Colts playing host to the Houston Texans. We have the Texans as 1-point road favorites. In this one, the over-under set at a much more appealing 47.5 than what we're going to be treated to earlier in the day on Saturday, where we're looking at 35.5. Both these teams obviously have a lot on the line. It's a loser goes home type of scenario. Houston can win the division with a win and a Jacksonville loss or a tie. They can tie and still get in, but they need some help. But if they win, they are in. That's the bottom line there. And same goes for Indianapolis. Indianapolis needs a little bit more help to win the division. But even still, we have the division potentially on the line here. And if nothing else, a playoff spot with Houston being a little bit closer to full strength this week, with Stroud being back in the fold. What are you expecting here? Obviously, with Houston being favored on the road, it seems like a pretty significant development here.
Yeah, Houston, they got some injuries, but most of it's on the defensive side, defensive line specifically. So with Stroud there, and in my opinion, with the Colts corner rotation, especially on the boundary being pretty vulnerable, this should be a game where Stroud does well. And I guess the question, if that's true, is like how well exactly Nico Collins being fully healthy would help raise the ceiling on what could occur there. And I guess the rest would depend on how much of a game and how quickly with their possessions the Colts can move on offense. Because if the Colts can make something of a shootout of it, I feel like Stroud should be able to just kind of match as many punches as they need to and add one more for good measure. Because like Nico Collins against it's two rookie corners, I believe, Jalen Jones and Julius Brents, that the Colts have. I guess I better double check the injury report or IR, but those two are outside. Kenny Moore is in the slot, and I think Nico Collins can beat any of them even more. But the rookies on the outside, they're particularly vulnerable. And if Collins can get to like 120 yards here, then Stroud, I guess Noah Brown being injured is a little weird. I still feel like they should be able to get Xavier Hutchinson out there and making plays in his place. But admittedly, Robert Woods is missing practice, but Robert Woods, even if he were healthy, has not done anything all year, no matter where they play him. And
who could have seen that coming?
Yeah, they've tried him both inside and outside, and nothing's going at all. So admittedly, we might have a situation where Stroud is playing well, but only has one viable target to throw to, and maybe that causes some issues. But I still believe in Xavier Hutchinson. Apparently, John Mechie can't play more than like 20 snaps in a game, but those have been he's been productive on a per snap basis. And I guess Devin Singletary's done just enough that they should be able to get the win. But admittedly, if Collins is the only viable receiver, then a good Gardner Minshew game could make it really close. It's the Minshew part that I have more trouble with, because even with the Texans defensive line obliterated, it's kind of hard to trust Minshew. Like he's had some really ugly tape over the course of the year.
No, he has, and yet I don't know. There's something cagey about him.
Oh yeah,
and
he does the most of with what he has. That's definitely true.
No question. And I think in the end, with the stakes being what they are, and I know that there's two rookie head coaches involved in everything, but I think I give the slight lean to Indianapolis. I think Houston's a more fun story, but I feel like Indianapolis finds a way here and wins this one.
Yeah, fair enough. I think both head coaches are great, so I don't really see like a chump to pick on either side. I don't know. I think it'll be close either way, but I lean the Texans just because I do think that the longer the game is on a close line, the more Minshew is liable to be just not good enough. I think if Taylor has a huge game, then maybe that's not the case. But as it stands, even Gardner Minshew's good games require like 100 yards from Pittman and then, another 60 yards from Downs or somebody like that. And that's still just like 160 yards, So it's not all Minshew's fault either, especially if they're not going to figure out how to get Pierce viable routes. So yeah, I think I lean Stroud plus Nico, just kind of barely out muscling the other side.
Sure. I mean, I can absolutely see that a case to be made for either side here. I lean Indy, but it wouldn't shock me whatsoever if Houston goes in there, gets this done, and punches their ticket for the postseason. Before we move on over to Sunday, got a message from our friends over at Circa. Get ready for the ultimate big game parties at Circa Resort and Casino. Super Sunday is in Las Vegas this year. Watch the big game poolside at Stadium Swim's big game viewing party. Massive screen, booming game sound, and a view of the pyrotechnic and visual effects throughout the game. Snag the best seat in the sun, day beds, poolside boxes, cabanas, and more. Or touchdown at the world's largest sportsbook, Circa Sports, for the big game bash. They got 3 stories of football glory featuring a 78 million pixel screen. Book your seat with a variety of reservation options, including bottle service, open bar, stadium-style food, and more. Don't miss these legendary viewing experiences on February 11th. The big game viewing parties only at Circa Resort and Casino. Reserve today at circalasvegas.com. All right, Mario, on to Sunday. We are going to make some use of again, Week 18, funky. We got a bunch of teams eliminated, a bunch of teams that are still in play for the postseason. So that sets up some funky matchups. But Mike Clay over at ESPN has cobbled together a good little cheat sheet for which teams have something to play for, which teams don't. But I think it's important to make the distinction that a team with high urgency this week, they might be in trouble in a sense. Like they'll be playing at full strength, but like an eliminated team on the other side could easily want to play spoiler because as the schedule sets up, it's always divisional matchups, and who doesn't want to ruin their divisional rivals' season. So Tampa Bay again has a lot to play for this weekend. To be clear, their playoff scenario includes they can win the South with a win or a tie and a New Orleans loss, and they clinch a playoff berth with a tie, a Seattle loss, and a Green Bay loss or tie. And we're well aware that the Panthers are eliminated. I believe they were the first team to be eliminated. Spread in this one, Bucs on the road, 4.5-point favorites.
Yeah, that's tough because they've got some injuries to keep an eye on at the very least. I mean, we'll see about Carlton Davis. I guess he's not so important given the passing game on the other side of this game. And maybe there might not really be a defense other than Green Bay. Apparently there might not really be a defense that Bryce Young can do well against, but Carlton Davis being out would make things a little easier for the Panthers to move the ball. Tristan Wirfs, we got to keep an eye on. I don't know what the latest of his shoulder injury is, but Brian Burns against whoever the backup is a issue if you're the Buccaneers. So yeah, especially when you throw in the Ejiro Evero factor on defense, even though I think the Canales guy has done a pretty good job with the Buccaneers. Evero is different, or at least he's more proven at this point, I would say. So it is particularly going on the road too. It's like the Buccaneers got to be a little careful. What I can't tell is, do these players care at this point if you're the Panthers? Because it is possible they sort of play for personal pride. That definitely happens. Like you don't need a team to like their coach or care about their coach or ownership or whatever to play hard. There's personal esteem sometimes that goes into it enough. But man, it's got to be so just demoralizing to play for the Panthers and see your owner act like an idiot and just ruin the team. And you're like, you're working hard almost all year just to get out here and have to play for this team that stands no chance in the long term because of how stupid these ill-gotten ownership or otherwise influential positions are staffed with these people who are just buffoons who just are some of the worst people on earth. So that's got to suck. But if they can play, I think the defense will at least play hard, and that might be enough to make this dangerous for the Buccaneers, especially if bad Baker shows up, And I don't know what hinges on Mayfield's bad games or good games this year, but it sucks. A game like last week is like, how do you not get a big game from Mike Evans when there isn't even Marshawn Lattimore out there, and they got like a special teamer playing at corner? That's crazy. But if Baker can keep it together here, I mean, basic deal with the Panthers is it's really, really difficult to be competitive against a vaguely competitive opponent if your passing game is bad in general, but certainly this is a new kind of bad that we're witnessing with Bryce Young. I mean, it's not as many turnovers as like the Ryan Leaf year or whatever other ridiculous historical cases, but this is pretty much the worst passing game we're ever going to see,
It's brutal to watch. And, we've pretty much, I mean, we had our doubts about Bryce Young coming into the year and had our doubts about the Panthers generally coming into the year. But by like week 2, week 3, it was like crystal clear, like, oh, we're watching like a historic type of train wreck here.
Yeah. It's like it's brutal. And I can't really think of any comparison, honestly. It's just, not to write off Young permanently. I mean, maybe he can get something going at some point, but safe to say he at the very least will need a very particular set of accommodations. And the Panthers are not the people to figure out what it is.
Nope, not accommodating to that end. To be clear, let's move on over to the AFC North. We've got the Browns and the Bengals. Bengals 7-point favorites in this one. So you know what that means. The Browns are locked in to their playoff spot. We already know that Joe Flacco is not going to be starting for them. And yeah, I mean, they punched their ticket. They are locked into the 5 spot. The Bengals were eliminated from the postseason last week with their loss to the Chiefs. So this sets up as one of the lower leverage games of the weekend. But even still, looking at that spread, how do you see this one shaking out, and what could interest you from this game?
I guess if the Bengals move away from Joe Mixon in this game, maybe they do like a running back version of the Russell Wilson thing where they pretty much bench Mixon so that he can't break his ankle and get a check in May. Maybe they go with Chase Brown. I don't know, something like that. Maybe interesting. I don't know what the Browns like. I guess Pierre Strong is going to have to play a lot, which is kind of interesting because he's been I don't know how consistent he's been, but his explosive plays have made his overall work in the NFL pretty efficient and explosive. But there's got to be some kind of thing he's bad at because both the Patriots and the Browns have been kind of loath to put him on the field, even though he tends to make big plays when they give him the ball. So there must be some practice rep that he does where it just everything goes off the rails, and that's why they keep him third. I don't know, but a guy that fast with the results that he's had, if they give him the ball in a game like this, that could be kind of interesting. I don't know how you approach pass catchers for a game like this, though, because there could be like, I don't know, 8 receivers who play 20 snaps or more on each side, or not 8 on each side. There could be something like 10 receivers in the game total who play more than 20 snaps, depending on what kind of rotation the teams are going with. So, don't know as much about that. Maybe quarterback too, but it's the running backs, I guess, that there aren't so many obvious alternatives to give snaps to. Like if Mixon is pretty much out for the Bengals, then it's just Travion Williams and Chase Brown, and maybe they both get to 30 snaps, but that's usually enough.
Right. Yeah. And you figure it's not going to be like a super high play count in this one. I get something that caught my eye a little bit yesterday was like someone had kind of cobbled together the revenge game narrative for Jeff Driscoll, when he got cut from the Bengals. So he might be coming to play in this one. He'll be the starter for the Browns.
He's got to be able, with how Dax Hill has taken angles this year. I mean, Driscoll could go 80 yards.
He could. He is an athlete. Like we remember him from his La Tech days and prior to that at Florida. But
I remember him in the NFL. He does some cool like stunt plays. Just give him the ball, tell him to go.
That's our kind of backup. I've kind of noticed over the balance of this podcast, we like a backup that plays with reckless abandon, and I think Driscoll qualifies. So this would be a great game for remembering some guys from college and from other stops in the NFL. But beyond that, probably not a ton of juice to squeeze from this one. The over-under in that, for the record, set at 37.5. Onward to the NFC North, the Vikings clinging to their playoff hopes. They are, I think, among the teams that haven't been eliminated yet, they have the worst chance of making the postseason. Obviously, the Lions were able to clinch the NFC North earlier, so they don't have a ton to play for, especially by Mike Clay's metrics. There is some distinction to be made, though. They could go to the number 2 seed, or they could fall as low as the 3 seed, but no worse than that. Whereas Minnesota, they need to win. They need Green Bay to lose. They need Seattle to lose, and they need Tampa Bay to lose. I won't get into the other scenario. I guess it's the same one, except New Orleans losing would be the other way in which Minnesota gets in. But either way, Minnesota needs to win. Why exactly did they do what they did last week with like the season on the line?
I don't know. There's not a single angle that I can think of that makes any sense, and it doesn't really matter how charitable you're trying to be with O'Connell. O'Connell, he seems to be better than some coaches. He seems to have some insights as like a play caller. It seems like he occasionally will have a game plan that's fairly impressive. Maybe he'll prove to be a good quarterbacks coach, something like that. Maybe he'll get better with experience. But the judgment he showed in managing, not just that week, but I guess pretty much since the Cousins injury at quarterback, the judgment he's shown has been kind of dubious at best. And in this case, it's just bad. For the most recent game, it was just there's no justifying. Either you cannot bench Jaren Hall after 15 snaps, or you cannot start him. If you're going to give him a 15 snap leash, you cannot start that guy. And if you pull the leash at that point, you've just backtracked on everything that you insisted was the case all week. And why should we take seriously anything you really say from this point or even before it, if that's the ease with which you'll just totally, backtrack on everything you said was true. And it is one thing, of course, to say like, oh, we made a mistake, but making that mistake in that situation is not acceptable. Again,
right.
If you can't give him 15 snaps, you can't start him. So I think there's also the case that it was unfair to Hall to put him on the field if you're going to yank him that fast. Like, look, if you can't tolerate him throwing an interception in his first 10 passes, put Mullins back out there. You clearly don't care how many interceptions he throws, so put the guy in who you don't care how many interceptions he throws. I don't know why it only matters in one case, but if it does, put in the guy who you don't care if he throws interceptions. So it's at best kind of like scatterbrained thinking. It's not sticking with any one thought. It's just pushing buttons, just lashing out at the colors and the sounds and not really thinking a whole lot. And I don't know, maybe it was just one time losing his cool kind of thing, but at the very least he better not, let that be a tendency, because he blew it. He spilled it all, spilled the chili all over the floor, and it was all avoidable. It really was.
It absolutely was. You let the most maligned coordinator that still has a job, arguably Joe Barry.
Joe Barry master class on you.
Yeah, baby.
With the playoffs on the line. Oh, man.
At home.
At home on national TV. Oof.
On New Year's.
Kevin O'Connell, you have been buried, my friend.
Get used
to it. He got
you. You got buried. Do you think, we touched on it briefly earlier, but do you think Kirk Cousins is a Viking next year?
Yeah. Main reason just being, given the uncertainty of any given alternative for the Vikings, the fact that it might be otherwise like prohibitively expensive to keep Cousins doesn't matter as much. From anybody's point of view in the building too. It's like even if you're Kwesi and you're like, oh, I'm Mr. Analytics, I know not to overspend, I know how to do value. It's like, that's great, but you're getting far enough in your tenure as the GM that people are just, including the owner, are going to just eventually be like, we need some wins, buddy. We don't really care about efficiency right now. If you're efficient in losing, you're gone. So you're not going to care about efficiency anymore. You're just going to pay whatever you have to make yourself feel like you're not going to get fired, and choosing question mark instead of Kirk Cousins, both Kwesi and O'Connell need to worry that pushing that button means we're both gone.
Right. And, you don't want to fumble the bag that is Justin Jefferson, as far as, how much is he going to want to stay in a place where there's a, kind of a project at quarterback when there's obviously a shorter shelf life to your prime as a receiver. We've done this before with Randy Moss in Minnesota. Maybe they don't want to make that same mistake twice, and therefore, keeping Cousins probably a good way of making that happen. So I expect Cousins to be back in Minnesota next year. Let's get on over to the Jets and the Patriots. If I have to see any of this game, I'm going to be upset.
At least it should look about as good as all the early season games between these teams. Like, you don't have to worry about either team failing to show up, because, or at least, not worse than has been the case all year with either one. So maybe actually watch this game in particular, because it'll have like the least feeling of what is that? It'll feel more on rhythm to you. Like if you watch these other games with like the backups and the uneven play, you'll get a sense of vertigo. But with the Patriots and the Jets, everything will feel nice and on time.
That's true. It might as well be played in September. As far as
this is a week 3 game.
Yeah, it honestly is. So we have the Patriots as 1.5 point favorites at home in this one. Again, obviously, excuse me, both teams eliminated from playoff contention. I feel like the Patriots at once have more incentive to lose this one to stay, within the sweepstakes for a quarterback in this upcoming class. So playing for draft position a little bit more than the Jets are. But does Belichick really take heed to that? We'll have to see.
I could see Belichick getting some impressive effort from his players. I know it clearly hasn't gone well this year, even the last couple of years, but I don't think Belichick has really had a problem getting players to believe in him, like play hard for him. There's certain players who he didn't get along with, who I'm sure would say something unflattering about him or another, but generally Bill Belichick has inspired players. So not that that's not the case for Robert Saleh on the other side. It's just, I am assuming Bill Belichick is, either the best coach ever or one of the best coaches ever. And even if he's lost a step or two or whatever, sometimes guys like him will just sort of, have like a little more left than you might think. They just look weaker than they've been before, but it doesn't mean he's harmless.
No, exactly. Like he still has it to an extent. I mean, you could almost argue that winning 4 games this year is overachieving based on
they did have structural issues. It's like he arguably is culpable for the structure that occurred there. Like it's from a coaching angle, it's an excuse. From a administrative view, it's not. But as a coach, Belichick, I think, did do a great job this year. It's just he, with the collection of players they had on offense, it was just kind of completely doomed.
I'd say perspective-wise, you look at the 31-0 loss to the Saints or the 6-0 loss to the Chargers. It feels like the Patriots are much different now than they were then, and the Chargers being a much more recent case, and that was against Justin Herbert. There was a stretch there. I think I mentioned it back while the stretch was ongoing, but they'd given up 26 points over a 3-game sample, but they had just scored 13, and that was the problem.
Yeah, and if the offense had worked, he would have made everything else work. His problem is he doesn't know how to make an offense go without Tom Brady or without an assortment of standout skill position players. But in this game, if neither team can score, that seems to me it's the ball is, it's a game that's more of Belichick's nature and probably something he's comfortable playing within.
Random thought that I've been playing around with in regards to Belichick and Patriots and offense. Are you familiar with who John Rice Plumlee is?
Is that the Mississippi quarterback? Or UCF?
Yeah, both.
Okay. What about him?
I could see like the Belichick meme of him with the binoculars. Like JRP is like his next Edelman project.
Edelman?
Yeah, because JRP, he was not like a quarterback initially at Ole Miss, and he hardly qualified as such at UCF. Just playing in the Gus Malzahn system, but in Burrows last year at LSU, they played Ole Miss, and JRP ran for like 200 some odd yards.
Against the short, fast legs guy. Yeah.
See, so he's an athlete. Like, he absolutely is an athlete. I think he's a great baseball player too. So I don't know. I got my eye on him in day 3. We'll see how he tests, but
I don't know where
making the switch.
If the Patriots really get rid of Belichick, which I actually do think it's a mistake. They need to figure out their more personnel management, if anything. But if they get rid of Belichick, then I'll be curious to watch where he goes. Hopefully he has minimal personnel input, and i.e. only on questions of like finding the next element in defensive players and offensive linemen, I guess. Those picks he does pretty good. But yeah, no receivers allowed unless you're switching them from a mobile quarterback who's a bad college passer.
Correct. Okay. Those are the confines in the structure that we need, whether Belichick is coaching New England or somewhere else next year. But regardless, wherever he's at, JRP, taking a look-see. And then I have nothing really to say about the Jets. I mean, I do suppose I came across the wire yesterday that Dalvin Cook is released. So do you think we get a decent glimpse at Izzy?
Yeah, I mean, they were working him in. He had like 10 carries last week or 2 weeks ago over Cook. So, we know Abanikanda is basically raw materials. We know he's not going to be as on schedule or reliable in this week, this year, as he will be a year or two from now. He's really young even still. I know numbers like this might not seem that significant, but him turning 21 just before the season started, or no, he turned 21 in like October or something. That's crazy. He there's guys who are rookie running backs who are 3.5 years older than he was at the start of his rookie year. So he needs the seasoning, I'm sure, but the lack of playing time for Abanikanda to this point is not really a measure of his talent. It's just a measure of kind of like how far ahead of schedule he is being here at all.
Well said. I'd like to get a glimpse. It would really make my dead best ball teams.
He can run. He can definitely run. It's more like will he miss a blitz pickup or something? But I don't know. I think Abanikanda is going to crush the value of that pick where they took him. I think there were a lot of running backs who went ahead of him. It was stupid all along. And yeah, I guess more realistically, more honestly, I need this to go because I need to be able to stand up and say, see, Tank Bigsby and Roshan Johnson going ahead of Abanikanda was always nonsense, and I was always right about that.
You were.
We'll see. I mean, I could be wrong, but we'll see. I don't think I'm wrong. Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, I would say that Bigsby and to a slightly lesser extent Roschon, not good picks.
Bad running back and maybe good fullback, respectively.
Okay, all right, but we got to set the parameters. Onward to Falcons Saints, one of the more impactful games of this weekend. We have both these teams still alive. New Orleans 8-8, Atlanta 7-9. As far as the scenarios are concerned, Atlanta gets into the playoffs via winning the South by winning, and Tampa Bay losing. And on the New Orleans side, they can win the South with a win and a Tampa loss, or a tie and a Tampa loss, or they could sneak into the wild card with a win, a Seattle loss or tie, and a Green Bay loss or tie. So those are the setups for this game. We have the spread here set as the Saints 3-point favorites in this one. I continue to never be able to really know what the Falcons are doing. And weeks like last week with the Saints, it's like, yes, they are capable of doing that, or like the game in Indianapolis or the game against New England, but they also are completely capable of snoozers as well. So I have trouble reading both these teams. I think everyone, fairly doesn't really understand the NFC South other than the Panthers. But how do you see this one shaking out?
It is tough. The Falcons defense, I think, is a bit fake in that they've had metrics putting them in the top 3 to 5 pretty much all year, especially as a run defense. And I don't think they're that. I think they're more like maybe the 12th, 10th best defense, something like that. Definitely got a lot better with Bates there. He's been a monster. They got the run stuffing personnel, it seems, and they'll always show up. But if Derek Carr is just slightly better than he usually is, if he's a little bit more courageous than he usually is, then he should keep it together against a defense like this, if only because the pass catchers are just really good. All year, going into this year, we always had good reason to say that this pass catcher rotation the Saints have is one of the best in the league. Even after Michael Thomas's injury, I think that's the case, because as Juwan Johnson showed last week, he always could have been, the last 3 weeks, I guess you could say, he always could have been one of the most productive tight ends in the league. And to be slightly more fair to Carr, Johnson was constantly pointed out as one of his main targets in training camp, and that kind of makes sense. Derek Carr, his inclination as a quarterback is to always seek shelter and hide from pressure, and checking down is one way that is expressed as a passer. So Juwan Johnson could have been there, or if he had been there all year, things could look a little different. Olave, as he has shown the past, he's been like injured and sick the past month, and he's still putting up really good numbers, as he's apparently clicking a little better with Carr, who is just knuckleballing all over the place. They couldn't get on the same page apparently. Like a catcher who is after many grueling practice sessions earned the trust of R.A. Dickey. He's now got the certification to catch passes from Derek Carr. Rashid Shaheed is still a monster in my opinion. So there's a lot at the route running positions that makes it easy for Carr to show up in any game, and this one included, especially because the Falcons have no pass rush. They're all year they've been completely devoid of pass rush, or at least since the Grady Jarrett injury. It's like their best edge rusher is Ibikiti or something, who's like a backup mostly. I don't even know what they're doing. So if Carr senses pressure in this game, it's all in his mind, and that does happen sometimes. He'll imagine it, but it won't be there. And if he understands that it's not there and keeps it together, he should be able to do a lot more damage than the Falcons passing game, no matter what conditions you lay out for them. And then of course, if you don't lay out conditions for the Falcons game, it's like there's the passing game. There's a lot that can go wrong there. So the Saints should have a safe advantage here, in my opinion, just because even bad Carr is better than Heineke or Ritter. But the Falcons, because they make the game so short, they have a way of like being within field goal range of winning or tying, no matter how bad their offense is. And that's clearly what they're banking on here. And it's I assume the people who are betting the spread on the Falcons side, they're banking on that dynamic too.
Yeah. The Falcons games, like the end result is almost always a close game. And you're also guaranteed a pretty ugly game. If you're a Falcons fan, do you just want to lose this game so that you don't really have to like have that shallow, empty playoff berth that keeps Arthur Smith employed?
Yeah, I will say I don't know if that would keep Arthur employed, but it's certainly a risk that the Falcons fans don't need, and they could use whatever draft positioning they can get. So it's tough situation that they're in, because it's they're in like a purgatory hell kind of thing where their actions might trap them for longer yet than need be. And I don't know which way it's going to go. I do think Arthur Smith gets fired either way, though. I think that was settled once there's that other stupid game a week or two ago.
Panthers.
I think the owner, that was the kind of thing that an owner sees and cares about and never really forgets. And I think when that happened, Arthur Smith was he signed his papers back to Memphis.
Yeah, losing to the Panthers was probably the death knell for him, but we'll see. Atlanta's one of those teams that likely, sort of like the Steelers, probably enters the veteran quarterback carousel. I don't think we'll get to the Bears, but I don't think the Bears trade Justin Fields to the Falcons, but it's certainly something that people will be talking about as a potential. But I could see Russ ending up there as
with
well.
The Falcons.
Yes.
Yeah, I think what happens next with the Falcons depends a lot on if it's just Arthur Smith or if it's Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot that get fired, because there's even the way it's gone. Of course, there's a way it could have gone differently. They could have taken Justin Fields over Kyle Pitts. If they taking Kyle Pitts, they could have emphasized more of a passing ideology in their next coaching hire to get better results, et cetera, et cetera. There's so many ways this all could have been avoided, and I think a certain kind of shot caller can get the Falcons on track pretty quickly. But to me, a Russell Wilson signing would not constitute such a course. So if they sign if it's some goof who's running the show, then I think the Wilson possibility gains from that.
Yeah, exactly. So they're definitely a team with a lot to get sorted out as we get into the offseason, regardless of whether they're able to get it done on Sunday. Before we move on to our next game, which will be Jags-Titans, got a message from our friends over at OddsR. Are you ready to revolutionize your sports betting approach? Begin with a 2-week free trial at oddsr.com, where cutting-edge AI technology sharpens your edge in the betting game. Benefit from our proven 2-year track record boasting 60% accuracy rate and an impressive 10% ROI. The OddsR AI meticulously sifts through extensive data to reveal high-value green plays, guiding you towards smarter betting decisions. And it's not just about the numbers. The OddsR app is exceptionally user-friendly, crafted to be your go-to betting advisor right at your fingertips. Jumpstart your journey to betting smarter and more successfully. Simply visit the iOS or Google Play Store, download the OddsR app, and step into a world of confident betting. Your path to a more strategic betting experience starts with our 2-week free trial. Download today, where smart strategy triumphs over luck. Again, that's OddsR, spelled ODDSR.com. Also got a message from our friends over at SmashUp. Are you one of the many sports fans who is not ready for the season to end? Then you have to play SmashUp Fantasy Sports, the fastest growing free game. In SmashUp, your traditional fantasy team gets supercharged by Smash Cards, which are like video game power-ups that you pick to boost the scores of your players or even your entire team. Think your kicker is going to have a big game? Then choose a card like Big Kick Energy to power them up. Are you starting Justin Fields? Then play Scramble Spikes to score more from his running. Paired with cool video game-like visuals, SmashUp is the biggest innovation in fantasy sports in a very long time and really feels like it was designed for sports fans. And here's the best part. You can play for free and win fantastic prizes. No credit card needed, no hidden fees. All users receive 3 entries per week, but with our code RotoWire, you'll unlock a 4th entry every week through the Super Bowl. And if you use our promo code or join the group RotoWire from your profile, you can play against us in our private tournament for a chance to win a free RotoWire fantasy football subscription. Enter now at smashupsports.com and join the future of fantasy sports. Onward to Nashville. Got the Jags and the Titans. Jags 4.5-point favorites. Jags kind of in a perilous spot, but in a better spot still than some of their other AFC South compadres. They can clinch the South with a win or a tie plus a Houston-Indy tie, or they can clinch a wild card spot if they tie and Pittsburgh loses or ties, or a Pittsburgh loss, a Denver loss or tie, and a Houston, Indianapolis result. So a little convoluted there, but basically it's pretty straightforward. If Jacksonville wins, they get a home playoff game.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I don't know what to make of the Titans side of this. I guess we can probably assume that Mike Vrabel, maybe more than anyone in the league, would get an immense high out of being a spoiler, especially to a divisional opponent. He wouldn't get as much of a high as if Urban Meyer were still the coach. Apparently, Mike Vrabel will one day slay Urban Meyer, but
good man.
In the meantime, he's going to probably try to just give Doug Peterson an ulcer by getting the win here, even though in theory they shouldn't really have any reason to care. Certainly, they're a bit shorthanded. I don't know what to make of the quarterback situation. I mean, I don't really believe Levis is better than Tannehill at this point, but Tannehill has been awful enough that it's fair to suspect that the Levis injury undermines them here. I can't tell what to expect from as a person who tends to lean negative with the Jaguars offense under the direction of Sherwood Press Taylor. I wonder if the Titans defense can come through with like a legitimately strong game here, or if the possibility is overestimated by me because of that kind of assumption of negativity with the Jags offense. But unless Press Taylor shows a complete inversion of nature here, I think, you almost have to give the advantage to the Titans defense, because there's only something like 6 or 7 defenses in the league maybe that I would give the Jags offense the advantage, even though they probably have one of the 10 most talented offenses in the league. So the extent of the failure and almost sabotage in the case of Taylor is something that I can't emphasize enough. I don't just repeat it out of compulsion. It's like I really am serious about how bad I think it is. And I think the Jags got to be careful. Like if they're sloppy at all, if their defense especially disappoints at all, that could get out of hand quick, or it could get away from them much easier than they might suspect, because just one turnover that the Titans turn into a touchdown, or one short field that the Titans turn into a touchdown. If Derrick Henry gets rolling at all and the Jaguars are behind in the scoreboard, those two details alone might be enough to bury them.
Yeah, I do think I like the Titans against the spread, and I think I like the under in this one. The under is set at 40 over at BetMGM. I think it's like an ugly game that the Jags kind of back their way into winning by like a field goal, but I don't trust them.
I'll say
by more than a
Titans.
Field goal.
I don't think that. I think Jags are weak. Jags are fake. They're all nonsense basically. I don't think they have it.
I don't either. It's disappointing because I don't know. Even when they were rolling, they had what, like a 7 or 8.
Oh, they sucked all year. Even when even they're winning games, I was like, that team sucks. Don't talk about that team. That team is terrible.
Yeah, it's
so it is all avoidable. I mean, if Antonio Pierce were running the Jags, they're like 13-4.
Yeah, but instead they're fighting for their playoff life, or more specifically, like winning the division. But they do still need to get this done this weekend in order to clinch a postseason berth. But at this stage, I think as just a neutral observer, I think I'd probably enjoy watching the Texans a little bit more in the playoffs.
Yes.
But
better team for sure.
Yeah, I think so, and better coached, as you're aptly putting there. On the Tennessee side, is this the last game we see Derrick Henry in a Titans uniform?
Probably. I don't know if we got to factor that into our narrative machine at all, our narrative model. See if that changes the projection. But
it's the narrative model loves something like that.
The narrative model has put a good flag on Derrick Henry's projection for this week. Yeah, man. I guess I'm in. Why not? Yeah. It's the Vrabel factor. You know, that's why Vrabel will take it so seriously. Actually, it's not even to spoil any other team or any particular team. In this case, you know, divisional rival. It's that Mike Vrabel is the guy who said, like, all the teams. What was that quote? He said, like, all those other teams, you know, they got this or that, but we're different because we have Derrick expletive Henry. And that was this offseason that he said that, wasn't it? It's not like this is not something from like 4 years ago. So if that's how he sees it, this might be like a, you know, a kind of Braveheart last stand kind of thing to Vrabel because he's so in it with Henry specifically.
And we've seen Henry do crazy stuff against the Jags before. Jags defense much better right now than it was in some of those instances, but who knows? Maybe he goes back into the Wayback Machine one more time. Let's get on to the afternoon slate. We've got the Seahawks and the Cardinals. Seahawks 2.5-point favorites on the road. Seahawks sort of in a better boat than say the Vikings, but not a great one. They definitely need some help here. Obviously can't win the division. They need to win, and they need Green Bay to lose or tie, or a bunch of other stuff involving the Packers a constant, and then the Bucks or the Saints also slipping up this weekend in order to get in. But they got to win or tie either way. And, you know, Clay has it as such that, you know, Arizona doesn't have anything to play for because they're eliminated. But I don't know. How you feel about the Titans against the Jags is sort of how I feel about the Cardinals going up against the Seahawks here. I could see them wanting to end the season on a good note. They won last week.
The Cardinals will definitely show up and try their best. I just can't tell. I can't tell what a fair expectation is, and I can't tell what a likely outcome would be. But I think the basic issue is the Cardinals' outside corners, as I've been saying all year, they're not built to cover any NFL rotation, any NFL receiver rotation in particular, and certainly not guys like DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. I would mention Jackson Smith and Jigba, but at least that rookie third-round pick, Garrett Williams, seems like he might be pretty good in the slot for the Cardinals. So I would still give Jackson Smith and Jigba the edge there, though. And if the pass rush can't cause problems, and I think it's often been the pass rush that has been an issue for Geno Smith this year, then I think it should just be target practice for Geno Smith pretty much. And if the Seahawks passing game is rolling, they win most of the time. You know, it's like they've struggled to get it going in competitively meaningful games sometimes this year, but I just don't think that the things that trip them up in those cases are likely to show up here. So I think the Seahawks pretty much take care of business here. Basic reason being the Cardinals are a bad team, and I think while the Seahawks have their limitations, they don't strike me as the kind of team that shows up to a competitively significant game like this and then, you know, sleepwalks into it. Like, I think if they're even like a, you know, 7 out of 10 kind of team, they should be able to take care of this. And I think they, you know, are pretty much right at that line. Okay.
I mean, it's good to talk some sense into me because I was, you know, spouting optimism about the Arizona Cardinals, but
you're not wrong to do that. I mean, I could be wrong. This is just, you know, I just, if I think about DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett getting 18 targets against this defense, the projection comes out to something like 200 yards, and projections are often wrong, and certainly mine more than anyone else's. But this just seems like it's a lot to ask of the Arizona defense to have like an upset-worthy showing here.
This is true. I will say that the Seahawks only scored 20 on them earlier this year, and that was in Seattle. No, that means everything.
Yeah, it's. I think just in this case, they're more likely. I don't know. Those outside corners just the more reps that they have to cover against the receivers, the more I expect those receivers to go. It's almost like any down game the first time around, I'm sooner going to see as a reason for correction here rather than like the part one of a downward trend.
And then, looking at the other side, is there any like vulnerabilities that you'd be concerned about on the Seahawks defense if you're backing Seattle, given how Arizona's been? I wouldn't say they've been humming, but they sort of ambushed the Eagles last week and ran for a ton of yards. If Seattle doesn't come correct against the run,
running backs do matter. Quarterbacks don't, and the Cardinals gave a painful demonstration of that fact to the Eagles last week. Anybody playing the Cardinals has to worry about James Conner, I think, first. And the Seahawks have had some trouble on the ground this year. I think they've been okay, but not good enough that you feel safe around James Conner. I mean, the Eagles have a tough run defense, and they got ran over by Conner. So Conner, and then I guess to a lesser extent McBride, but I don't know if that's one of those things. Like if I don't think the Seahawks are particularly vulnerable to tight ends, but if you don't, it is like if you stop McBride at this point, you stop the whole Arizona passing game, because be it Kyler, the system, the receiver personnel, whatever, they're just not getting anything going there consistently. They're just checking down at pretty much every receiver rep, which isn't a good. McBride is their downfield threat right now, so it's one of those things. Like it's simple to say what the Seahawks need to do to get the win, but on the other hand, if you don't keep McBride under 80 yards, you're in a lot of trouble right there. At least if Conner keeps producing like he has pretty much his whole career.
I will say, just general comment, huge kudos to you for putting out the McBride radar as a good last round pick in best ball. That this summer he ended up on a lot of teams that advanced to the playoffs or even the finals. Because whereas like with some rookies, it's like, oh, they have the draft capital. We don't know how they've done in the NFL just yet, but we could maybe squint and see a way in which Sam Laporta is able to get it done, which you also called. But McBride, when you have kind
like
of
that.
a nothing,
Laporta's like the tight end one this year, isn't he? That's crazy.
I believe so.
But late round McBride's case.
Yeah. In McBride's case, what I'm saying is like after kind of like a dud rookie year in an offense that didn't project to do anything, being like, no, I like him in the 18th round. Like that was huge.
Yeah, thanks. It was late round tight end. It's Laporta. I still think Juwan Johnson could have been one of those guys if he just didn't get hurt, and seeing the last 3 weeks is only agonizing rather than like vindicating. But the McBride thing, I'm surprised at how much he took over that offense. I thought he'd like eke out 65 catches or something, and it's now like if they don't get him the ball, they're just kind of throwing the ball away.
Yeah, I mean he's been a beast. He's at 78 catches for 791 yards, only 2 touchdowns, which is a little bit surprising. But
bad team still is the problem. Yeah.
Yep, but again, I always tout this, but if you look at our player page, a mind as simple as mine needs color coding, and a lot of green for all of McBride's metrics, not a lot of red.
Right. Yeah, he's doing a really good job. Hopefully they can get more touchdowns next year, so he can get to 4 or 5, something like that.
There we go. We're calling it now. He's going to score slightly more next year. But either way, awesome year from him. One of like the fantasy heroes from this season. Let's go Bears Packers. Another potential spoiler set up. The Packers teetering on the edge of a playoff berth. The Bears have since been eliminated, but I mean, their record's not far behind. They are 7-9, Packers 8-8. Packers win and they're in, or a bunch of other crazy stuff happens if they tie in order to get them into the postseason. Again, Bears done for the year. This game taking place in Green Bay. We've got the Packers as 3-point favorites in this one, over under set at 44.5. I love the Bears here.
Really?
Love them.
The Bears. Why don't you elaborate on that?
Well, I think that they are incentivized to end the year strong. I don't know if Bears fans really want Eberflus back, but it sounds like it's what's going to happen anyway. With yeah, so
That's so funny. That's awesome. That's so cool.
But it's been a winding journey for Justin Fields to get to this point, but I think he's shown enough at this stage where it's like, yeah, no, I'd rather ride with him than take a gamble on the rookie. And I understand where you get to reset the clock as far as the contract goes on a potential franchise changing quarterback. But I think you also get more potentially in a trade return by shopping the first overall pick in this year's class, getting, moving back a little bit, getting a high draft pick likely for next year, similar to, how they got from Carolina. They could get an absolute king's ransom this year, in my opinion, for the first overall pick. And if Fields proves to not be it, then you have a really high pick next year. And if he does, then you have a team that is set up at quarterback and you get a top 10 pick. Like, that is extremely rare. And it's something that gives you extreme leverage. So that's just my P's and Q's on Fields and the quarterback situation there in Chicago. But the defense has played well. They've just generally been a very solid team over the second half of the season. And they get a chance to, when the Packers kind of rained on the Bears hype parade in week one, they get to kind of return the favor here in Lambeau.
Yeah, it's a dangerous spot for the Packers. I mean, I guess they might get Jair Alexander back, but I don't know what that whole situation is so weird. Don't know what to make of it. And DJ Moore is really, really good, of course. And I think it's DJ Moore's numbers that show Justin Fields is good enough as a passer and basically is the kind of player that the Bears need him to be, and that any team that lacks a quarterback should want to have as their franchise quarterback. And what I mean more specifically is you see a lot of these anti-Fields arguments where people are like, oh, but he's so bad as a passer, his yards per attempt, his completion rate, or whatever. These numbers are so bad, and they are problematically low figures. Like, they need to improve basically. But DJ Moore has played for other teams in his career, the Panthers in each case, but a number of scenarios he's gone through. We've gotten certain case studies of what kind of numbers he gives you with certain kinds of players throwing him the ball. And in none of his seasons did he have none of his career seasons did he have a year as productive as this one. And this year, DJ Moore is catching 70.8. I guess, granted, Fields missed a handful of these games. I wish I could.
He's a Tyson Bagent merchant.
And I wish I could run the splits on just the Justin Fields games, but DJ Moore has caught 92 of 130 targets, 70.8% catch rate at 1,300 yards, precisely 10 yards per target. He had 10 yards per target one other year in 2020, 10.1 even, but he caught 66 of 118 targets that year. So this is a catch rate distinction of like 15 points. It's DJ Moore's production that tells you what Justin Fields is as a passer, basically. And more specifically, DJ Moore in this construction of the offense, for Justin Fields' abilities as a passer anyway, was the only viable target, him and Cole Kmet, I guess you'd say. So you look at those numbers. You look at not the numbers of Darnell Mooney, these targets that were all wasted, Equanimeous St. Brown, whatever else. You look at the targets to DJ Moore and Cole Kmet, and you reason, well, if we get a third pass catcher who can give returns like these, all of a sudden Justin Fields' numbers go from 62% completed, 7.0 yards per attempt to 66% completed at 7.7 yards per attempt. And then all the narratives about him as a passer go away just like that. And instead you got people who are just looking at numbers without any of the other context going, oh, well, on the Dante Pettis team, he wasn't as good. Like, yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Why don't you go compare like that one big Elon Musk fan analytics guy comparing him to Mitch Trubisky based on his proprietary metrics, similar charts going into this year. Like, yeah, go listen to more people like that. Let's find more of these people to break it down for us. And this is the thing. It's important with respect to Poles and what he's going to actually do, because the question of what they should do basically doesn't matter. Poles is a political creature, And we know this because of all those leaks last offseason about how even this year, we're not even like 2 months removed from there being a game where the Bears lost and Fields was leaking to the press. Like, he never said he was sold on Fields. He never said that. Don't hold me to that. Now we're going back more the other direction, granted. But because Fields will cost so much to extend, and because Caleb Williams, Drake May will have team control at such lower figures on the cap, you're going to see these analytics people put out articles. There's going to be this drip about maybe they should trade Fields, just like last year. They're going to do the same thing because to them, the situation hasn't changed. And Ryan Poles reads that stuff. And so do owners. So do any front office guy looks at this stuff. So it'll be interesting to watch Poles do the political calculation on this whole thing. Because if he's thinking like, actually, all the smart analytics people, Sumer Sports wrote a blog that a lot of people saw about how actually it might be smarter to take Caleb Williams and trade Justin Fields for 2 first-round picks. That kind of stuff is going to show up. It's going to show up to Poles, and he's going to read it, and maybe he won't be affected by it. Maybe he will. I don't know. But I don't think it's a lock that Fields is there. I think there's still a coin flip's chance he's somewhere else, maybe Atlanta, which would be funny.
I just think, and maybe that this is reading too much from maybe it was Jeremy Fowler report that essentially Fields would draw like a second round pick in a trade right now. Maybe that's undervaluing it, but at the same time, no,
sorry. That's ridiculous.
Let me cook. But
you're cooking. There's such easy purchase for anti-Fields drivel. I'm blown away by it. Sorry, that's what I'm like. That's what I'm losing my mind about here.
But I still think with this quarterback class being what it's perceived to be, and the Bears having the first overall pick, the first crack at it, they could get a crazy haul for it. Like, I do think that is a bigger trade chip for them than Fields at this point. So I say, and I'm like the least kind of generous person towards the Bears. I think that they take up way more oxygen in the media in just in my day-to-day life than they are deserving of for having just won Super Bowl championship 40 years ago almost. But I know I'm just chucking it, but go ahead, trade the first overall pick, trade back to like 3 or 4, get yourself Marvin Harrison Jr. and then Fields, DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr. Come on. That's good.
I agree. You don't need to sell me on that. I to be unequivocally clear, I think the Bears should stick with Fields, and whatever else they do isn't even that important to me. I think they should just stick with Fields because I think Fields is that good. But yeah, man, what the other detail we got to keep in mind is what it will cost for him to be extended, because
right.
If the higher that number is, the more you're going to see this criticism of Fields. So we'll see how it all shakes out. But I don't know, man. I just think there's still a chance that if Poles can get a first and a third for Fields, if you're the Jets, why wouldn't you do that, right? There's got to be some team that would be willing to do that, in my opinion. 1 second-round pick. I think that guy was taking his estimation from a website that probably hates running quarterbacks. But I think if Fields costs something like what is it even going to be? If stupid Daniel Jones is $160 million over 4 years, then Fields could be like 200. And if it's that high, I could see Poles going like, no, we'll trade him to a team that will pay him that, and we'll take the rookie. So those are the details that have to shake out, I think. And
also, I am a Justin Fields fan. It took me a little bit to get over him leaving the University of Georgia, but alas. But I'm absolutely pulling for him. And also going back to bagging on Chicago a little bit, I'm a big Caleb Williams fan too. He went to my high school. I don't want him to go there. So Chicago generally ruins quarterbacks. I think Fields is like the only answer that they have. They should be happy that it's turned out or starting to turn out the way that it is. I don't want to see Caleb Williams in Chicago.
Maybe
for his own sake.
Maybe the Bears can trade Fields to the Falcons, and the Falcons can hire Ben Johnson, and then the Bears can take Drake May. Is that a good enough deal for you?
I'll take it.
Okay.
Drake May is merely collateral to me, and then adding on again, being a DC area guy, I would. Caleb Williams to Washington would be it'd be like the most textbook Dan Snyder move. But Dan Snyder's not the owner anymore, so I don't know if they'll move heaven and earth to make that happen or not.
Yeah, I don't know anything about those people, but anyway, if we can get Drake May to Chicago, Human Shield, get Caleb to someplace safe, maybe this scenario will happen if we just envision it enough.
All right, we got to start. You got to start now. You got to start. Putting things out in the universe early, then the higher the likelihood.
Yes.
You see, okay, you get it. We've been buddies and co-hosts for long enough for the people out there to know what we're about. Okay, that was a nice little diatribe on the Bears Packers that didn't really touch on the game too much, but either way, I think the Bears go in there and foul it up for the Pack. Chiefs Chargers, blech. Chargers 3.5-point favorites. Mahomes not playing in this one, of course. I mean, just instead of breaking down like the angles for this game, what's your stopping point on the Chiefs for this season? Like, are they a one and done?
Unless they play a really bad team in the first round, yeah.
I think so too.
It's Brett Veach masterclass on how to just slam not permanently, but for 1 year anyway, slam shut a Super Bowl window, because fact is they wanted to polish that turd, the Kadarius Toney trade, and they wanted to save money on Chris Jones to get that praise, the praiseworthy article responses from the analytics people. They wanted to show like, I'm not overspending for a stupid defensive player. I'm not going to fall for that. I'm going to be smart, get the safe value with Kadarius Toney at receiver, take my savings into the off season or something. I don't even know what he thought was going to happen, but instead they end up paying up for Chris Jones on a 1-year deal anyway, and they don't clear the cap space necessary to sign DeAndre Hopkins. If they had done that, if Brett Veach, instead of being such a smart, thrifty guy, if he had just paid up for Chris Jones, one of the best defensive players of the past 20 years, they would have had enough money on hand to then sign DeAndre Hopkins. And then basically all these problems that they have with their passing game never occur. It just never happens. They just roll. The defense just stays eating quarterbacks because Pat Mahomes throws another 45 touchdowns or whatever. It would have been that precisely simple. But instead, it was equally simply the case that, if you want to go with Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson as your outside receivers, guess what? Wildcard exit.
Yeah, honestly, it will be interesting, if nothing else, to see the Chiefs on the road in the playoffs. We have not seen that in the Mahomes era.
Yeah, they're going to be bad because they've already been disappointing for reasons that were, I think, predictable. If we knew that they were going to run this kind of offense, especially if Travis Kelce's seeming decline had been factored in, it's like you wore away whatever your margin was. You don't budget as like a solvent offense anymore. And it's so funny to me too. I've pointed this out on Twitter. I don't know if people think I'm joking, but them benching Mecole Hardman slammed the door shut on their own offense. I mean, say what anyone wants about Mecole Hardman, but he gave them 66% catch rate at over 9 yards a target, playing 600 plus snaps per season for 4 years. And Justin Watson is not doing that. Marquez Valdes-Scantling, not doing that. Not even close. For Andy Reid to look at something so glaringly obvious as that and then just stay stumped, stay completely out of ideas of how to fix it, even though he just watched it. He himself spent years watching it, and he still stands up there. He's like, I guess we just got to get Justin Watson going. You're not.
You did go to Penn.
You're getting colder, buddy. You're not getting any closer on this one. You're not going to get there, is what it is.
Yeah, no, they obviously need. Maybe the Chiefs did need like a little bit of a kick to the groin this year to get themselves back on track for the rest of Mahomes' prime. But this was quite a way of going about it. I'm not.
They did everything wrong. Everything
they
wrong.
Did. Crazy. Let's go Broncos Raiders. We got the Raiders 2.5-point favorites in this one. Another game where both teams are, kind of set as far as how their season has ended, with both teams being eliminated. Las Vegas, 7-9, Denver 8-8 going into this one. Again, the Raiders 2.5-point favorites in this one, over under set at 38.5. Any kind of interesting pieces that you're looking at from this one?
Not really. I mean, Antonio Pierce is the main interest in this, the Raiders, of course, and therefore this game. So, definitely keeping an eye on him and what he gets done. But as far as like scouting takeaways, this is more analogous to like a fourth preseason game. It's there's nothing really that this is going to determine for us.
I'm trying to figure out how I want to phrase this, but like, I don't want this week to be the week that gets Marvin Mims on everyone's radar. I want him to stay a secret for next year.
Yeah, I can imagine him being a confusing evaluation for some people, and not to make him sound simple as an evaluation, but I personally am not deterred at all. Like there might be a sort of reaction narrative on Mims, since there was the hype for him in that first 6 weeks or so where they let him play like 10 snaps a game and he'd lead the team in receiving yards and stuff like that. He's cooled off since then, of course. But if someone were to read that as, he turned out to be a flash in the pan or whatever, like, no, that's not really the read here. The read here is that obviously he was going to hit a cold stretch because he wasn't going to finish his rookie year with, like 800 yards on 300 snaps or whatever he was on pace for in the first 6 weeks. So there was necessarily going to be a cold period, or we would be forced to conclude by the end of his rookie year that he's one of the best receivers in the league, which would be ridiculous. It's things like that happen occasionally, but it would be a ridiculous standard to hold him to. So with Mims, we already know it's like, given his frame, given his skill set, he's not going to be like a 120 catch receiver who goes over the middle over and over. But what he will be is more like a T.Y. Hilton type, who he'll lead your team in catches a couple times, but it's probably more like 90 catches than 110. The trade-off is he's going to get you some years where he's like 15, 16 yards a catch. And the touchdown, if he's with a good passer, if he's in an effective offense throwing downfield, especially if they can do that, he'll have a high touchdown to target ratio eventually too, in my opinion. So Mims is really young, and he's got to be like, I don't know, he's got to be like 2 years younger than Zay Flowers or somebody who wasn't an underclassman. So it's more like in a year, Mims producing from that point is where we start to get more stringent. I don't know if that's the right word, where we get less lenient with the evaluation of his production, because it'll be more at a point in his development where it's like, okay, it makes sense to hold him to standards of particular kinds now.
Right. And, with Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton, taking up a lot of the receiver snaps there, and then their love of Will Jordan Humphrey and Brandon Johnson and so on. Maybe Peyton, along with Andy Reid, lost the plot just a little bit, but bottom line here is I want the people who victory lap to like the Marvin Mims, I want them to stay wrong by virtue of being right for one more week.
Fair enough. Yeah, I am a fan of Mims long term. Looks like he'll turn 22 in mid-March. So next year he'll be more the age that a fourth year graduate would have been, and it'll be more it'll be worth zooming in a little bit.
Is Jeudy going to be there next year?
I don't know. I can't tell what. It would be helpful to know who Sean Payton likes or dislikes personally. The list of the second sort could be rather long, and anybody on it is liable to get pushed out, even if they've been productive for them, even if they could be productive in some hypothetical scenario. Coaches who don't get along with players will get rid of them. They just do, and they bring in their cronies a lot of the time. Like we might see like Michael Thomas go to Denver or something like that. I don't know if Judy's on the list of players that Peyton hates, as Russell Wilson apparently was, but if he is, he's gone. I happen to be. I feel like I'm a Jerry Jeudy truther, even though I never meant to be that big of a fan. But everybody thinks he's so bad now that I kind of am a truther. I think he's a totally good starter. I just don't think he can play with Russell Wilson.
Yeah, and the evidence mounting against Russ, but obviously we don't have to see any more of that this year. We've got Eagles, Giants. We've got the Eagles as just 4.5-point favorites on the road in this one. As far as the Eagles are concerned, they can win this one and get the 2 seed potentially, depending on what happens with Dallas, or drop down to the 5 seed. So they need to take care of business here. Do we even trust them to do that at this point?
I guess we shouldn't. I mean, trust is definitely not the word at this point. I think we have like expectations for the Eagles, but they're not trustworthy anymore. They clearly are kind of like running out whatever premise they were working on in the first place, and they have to figure out something. Admittedly, I don't have as easy of an explanation for why they are floundering in a game like Week 16 against the Giants, because to me, a lot of the problems with the Eagles offense this year is simply that they have overexposed Jalen Hurts as a passer. They've overexposed their pass catching personnel by throwing the ball too much and not running enough. But 20 carries for DeAndre Swift in week 16 is admittedly all I could ask for, and yet they had some of their same problems in that one. I guess in that case, it was more they ran. I assume they ran 70 plus plays. So the issue, I guess, would have been the share of the offense, even if the volume of the carries was pretty high. They played 74 snaps in that game. So that's a lot of snaps. To me, the basic issue with the Eagles offense is Miles Sanders' production has not been replaced. And we know because of what's happened with Miles Sanders in Carolina, he's not even that good. So if Miles Sanders and his 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns at 4.9 yards per carry cannot get matched by DeAndre Swift, then either we're forced to conclude that DeAndre Swift is not as good as Miles Sanders, which I really do not believe, or we have to suspect that something has just been mismanaged in the time in between. Something has been managed differently, and that makes perfectly good sense because Shane Steichen was there in 2022, but not this year. So I think I'm biased. I'm inclined to think this way because Rashad Penny is a really good NFL running back, and it's as a runner in particular that he is good. The Eagles have made all this space in their offense for Kenneth Gainwell, Boston Scott, even DeAndre Swift, of course, in some cases, at the expense of Rashad Penny. And I don't know. I feel like Rashad Penny is such an obvious way for them to bridge that gap in production between Swift and Sanders. And if Swift can't get there himself, they've overexposed their passing game. Now they find themselves at a point where defense have adjusted. They're at the point in this long game of paradigm shifts. Things that were working for them for 2.5 years have been figured out, have been adjusted to, and now the Eagles need to find a way to counter adjust, find the new openings that defenses are conceding that they weren't 2.5 years ago, and find a way to make them pay for it, at least until they open up those looks again that were working the 2.5 years prior. And to this point, in each case they've been tested on this issue, they've failed. They just go out there, they keep spinning their wheels, they just get further down in the dirt, and then the game just sort of ends. And then we go to next week and we wonder, did they fix it? No, I think at this point we can assume they're not going to fix it because they'd have to change their approach, and they're loath to do it. They have this vision of a Smurf running back offense and a passing game that goes 40 plus times a game, even though Jalen Hurts can only make like 3 or 4 kinds of throws, and they just cross their fingers and hope it all scales up, and it doesn't, and we're seeing the dysfunction resulting from that.
And where does like the AJ Brown the decline in production? I'm not saying that AJ Brown is washed by any means, but it's confusing to me how since the bye week, AJ Brown has caught 38 of 65 targets for 442 yards. So that's just 11 yards a catch, just 1 touchdown after the pre-bye sample where he was averaging 15 yards a catch, catching 67 of 92 targets for over 1,000 yards through the first 9 weeks. What happened?
Well, so this is why I talk a lot about budgeting offenses and making sure your budget makes sense before you like plunge ahead with it, because after the first whatever number of weeks, 8, let's say, AJ Brown had something like 12 yards a target to his credit, and he was getting like 12 targets a game. So if you're the Eagles and you're witnessing that, it's of course good to see, but you need to start asking yourself the question of like, well, what if that dries up? And you have to assume it will, because you're otherwise assuming AJ Brown's going to finish a season at 12 yards a target, which on his target volume would mean something like 2,800 yards receiving. So obviously that's not going to happen. You have to assume as the Eagles that of course this will not happen. And just the same, you have to start figuring out answers right now for what you're going to do when it does happen. And what we're seeing their answer is keep mashing the same button. Just keep mashing the same button and hope it fixes itself. And it won't, because the fundamental issue is, again, overexposure. The production that AJ Brown was getting, that Jalen Hurts was getting via AJ Brown, was compelling defenses to reshape themselves, realign, reposition players, reconsider personnel groupings entirely to stopping that one part of the Eagles offense. And they found a way to spam the parts of the fields that they found out, by what drop tendencies Hurts correlates with Brown, and they've calibrated their defense to figuring all these things out, figuring out these precise timing questions, and they can focus on it to that extent because they stop ignoring other things, i.e. especially the run game between the tackles. And defenses, until they are threatened in a new area of the field, are going to keep spamming these areas that Brown is at. And you look at Brown's season-long numbers, they're awesome still. He's at 9.2 yards a target. He's caught 105 of 157 targets. These are still great numbers, which means his numbers withstood the cold stretch, right? We're at the phase now where they need to counter adjust. And the question of whether they counter adjust and whether they do it successfully would be the answer to the question of, will AJ Brown get back on track? I think they need to shake something loose for that to happen, because what they've been doing before, defenses basically are on the beat of it. And it's time for them to do something new so that the defense, for once, finds itself out of position. But it's been, to this point, more important to the Eagles to run a particular kind of offense. And I'm going to take the liberty of assuming some of the stubbornness of clinging to these premises is informed partially probably by analytical consultants, people giving them numbers about like, well, look, when you pass this much in situations like these, it yields an EPA of this. But if you run this much, it yields an EPA of this. And they're not noting the conditional details that change by going with an approach of either sort of a volume of any amount. And it's getting to the point, I think, where it's like they keep pressing the same buttons because someone told them this is how you get out of your problem. This is how you get out of this situation. It's like, no, you need to talk to some old ball coach about your problems. You need somebody to point out the 101s to you again, because you've forgotten how it all works.
Speaking of 101s, I feel like I just walked into the wrong classroom in college and like walked into like a 4,000 level class all of a sudden.
You walked into the room where the homeless guy is screaming at the mops.
This guy is spitting. I don't understand it, but he's going. But no, I think my thesis is that the Eagles don't get out of the divisional round, and you just gave a great explainer as
they
to why.
They can change or they can lose, yeah.
But either way, what they've been doing the last few weeks, basically since they got out of their schedule gauntlet, definitely concerning if you're an Eagles fan. Let's keep rocking here. We've got 3 more games to hit. We've got the Rams and the Niners. The Niners 4-point favorites in this one. Niners not really playing anybody in this one, obviously, because Purdy's not playing, McCaffrey's not playing. Imagine most of this other key skill guys and defensive guys aren't going to be out there, but they're still favored by this much because the difference for the Rams in this instance is you're playing for the 6 or the 7 seed. And I believe we got some news coming across yesterday that some of the key guys on the Rams will not be playing. That includes, I believe, Matthew Stafford. I think we are getting a Carson Wentz start.
That should be funny.
That's enough for me to like coming into this week. I was like, Rams. They're going to do it. But it's Carson Wentz. No way.
Yeah. Man, sorry, to be totally honest, I have trouble thinking through a game like this when we have no idea, no certainty anyway, which players are going to be playing or which team is going to try to do whatever. and I can't really make an opinion on it, but I guess. I mean, sorry. What is the read here? Because I don't even know. What is the assumption of the spread? Like, what do you think? What do you think it's envisioning as a game script?
I mean, honestly, it kind of signals that there's probably not a colossal or like the Niners are still a decent chunk better than the Rams by going from Purdy to Darnold.
It's just if the 49ers aren't playing for anything, then I think Shanahan will run a vanilla offense and maybe defense too, because he's or at the very least the plays that he does call are not necessarily to move the ball as much as to put a particular thing on tape that defenses then study so he can play off of it with some other thing. So I guess I'm not convinced that the 49ers will specifically care enough or specifically want to win to care enough to do it. But obviously I'd feel that way about the Rams too. So I don't know. I can't pick a side at all. Sorry. I guess I'll pick the Rams to cover, if only because I don't know how either team gets a lead. If the odds are nicer on the Rams, I guess I'll go with that.
Yeah, it's more than a field goal. I'll take the underdog, even with Carson Wentz. Wentz definitely going to be playing hard. Because,
I mean, actually, it's because Wentz. That's why because I think he'll do good. That's why I'm picking the Rams to cover.
Good can have a whole lot of different definitions, but like in this particular context, it's Wentz being a try hard while no one else is trying. Cowboys Commanders. Got the Cowboys as 13-point favorites on the road in the nation's capital. I don't know where are you at with the Cowboys right now?
They don't have any, or do they have something to play for here?
They need to win. Let's see, to I think have the 2 seed.
Like they might, in theory, play a worse team in the wild card round if they win this game than if they
correct.
Lose it.
And okay. Yeah, because they want to win the division. That's the big thing. They want to have a home playoff game. They can't get to the 1 seed, but they so
all right.
You gotta imagine they do this. Yeah.
Yeah, Dallas rolls, and if anything, it's like I feel like it's especially if they keep with the Dallas, decades-long tradition. Since this would be kind of like a no-stakes game in the sense of like the opponent being able to defend themselves, they might actually put up like 40 points or something.
Yeah, and Washington, for their own part, is pretty incentivized to stay at the number 2 spot in the draft. So gotta picture that they will do everything in their power to make that happen. Whether it ends in the Cowboys covering that huge number, history says that double-digit favorites on the road late in the season don't often cover, but
especially divisional, I guess.
Yeah, but this is a weird setup, of course. But I think my lean is to.
I'll say Dallas.
Yeah,
14.
I think it's. I'm there with you. And then capping things off, one of my favorite possible narratives: the Bills could be the number 2 seed in the playoffs by the end of this weekend, or they could miss the playoffs.
Sorry, we're on to the Dolphins Bills then.
Sorry, yes, we are.
Oh no, a normal person probably could have figured that out. I need things spelled very clearly, but this game's weird for me. I feel like the Bills are running pretty much the same script on their offense as the Eagles, although the Bills' offense's problems are more profound, and their issues are not. They're not like so ideologically specific. Their issue is they're trying to space out the route runners a very specific way, as if it were just an unchallengeably true fact that it's the best way to do it. You got to put Gabe Davis running 15 yards downfield. You got to have Dalton Knox running from the slot, this drag routes. You got to have Stephon Diggs getting double and triple teamed every play. And you have to have Gabe Davis running to the other corner when that happens, instead of just going to, if the defense is double and triple teaming Stephon Diggs, there should be space somewhere, right? And there should be some player on the team who can get there better, more efficiently than someone else. And those questions they don't ask. They just decide to run certain guys certain ways, no matter what the results are. And when the results don't work, they change the personnel rather than how they use the personnel. So if they keep doing this thing in the context of Stephon Diggs struggling further, if they keep doing this thing where Gabe Davis is running 15-yard routes down the sideline and Dalton Kincaid is running these like 5-yard, have Dalton Kincaid run a 5-yard drag opposite the other slot from Dawson Knox, who runs the same route from his side. Like, that whole offense is crap, and it's never going to work. It's just going to get worse results every week pretty much, because defenses are just selling out that much more on these very specific ways they deploy these players. And I'd like to think Vic Fangio could figure that all out. Granted, he got pantsed pretty badly by Monken last week, and maybe the game has passed up Fangio a bit. But if he can't figure out this Bills offense, we know it's passed him up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There was, in my mind, some signs towards the ends of his tenure in Denver that would underline that. But
yeah,
I don't know when it comes to Fangio. And then they lose Bradley Chubb last week. I mean, the vibes are kind of low.
That was so bad, man. I gotta excuse me. I gotta mention, because I did roast Soy Boy for pulling the same thing with Mike Williams, but yeah, Mike McDaniel, that's all on him. That's all his fault. The Bradley Chubb injury, and it kills them. It absolutely removes them from serious playoff contention, in my opinion. I think they probably, I don't know what I think. The Dolphins can win this game, in my opinion, because the Bills' offense is not a serious one. But yeah, neither of these teams look like serious playoff teams to me now.
No, I don't think so either. I think the Bills go in there and win. But, to kind of add some context here, the Bills are either third or fourth at a lot of sports books for Super Bowl odds, and the Dolphins are down at seventh.
I'll take the Dolphins to win this one. I don't know. The Bills offense, the way they have been running it, unless they play like a really weak defense, they get returns like a bottom 5 offense, and they just close their eyes and hope Josh Allen makes up the difference as a runner, and that's not sustainable. That's like how you win in overtime of a game or something. We're shorthanded. Maybe Allen can carry us this one quarter. An entire season, it's ridiculous.
I think so too. It seems like just the direction that these teams are going in right this instant. I still give the lean to Buffalo, but it would be the ultimate coronation of if they somehow managed to miss the playoffs in this setup. My doubts about them coming into the year coming to fruition at the last minute.
Well, I think your doubts have already been proven right. I mean, they were supposed to have a much better season than they've had, but on any terms. But don't we think at this point that Sean McDermott will eventually fail conclusively? Like, he keeps barely getting away. He keeps escaping. Certain death by a hair, and there's only so many times you can do that. I don't know. I think he's on borrowed time, and it's kind of like eventually that door is going to shut. The question is just like, is it now or next week?
Yeah, I think it's coming in the next few weeks. I don't view them as a Super Bowl contender. I think the Browns are much more dangerous.
Yes, absolutely.
As far as the AFC picture is concerned, but I think they do it this week and then lose in disappointing fashion in the first or second round of the playoffs, and that's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, that makes totally good sense. I'll accept that answer.
Okay, excellent. Well, Mario, been a tremendous season. Luckily for our listeners and viewers, we are going to keep things rolling. We do year-round here on this fantasy football podcast. We'll get into some playoffs next week, breaking down the full bracket. We'll also probably touch on some there will still be some time to do some playoff best ball drafts. The markets in those have shifted dramatically in the last couple of weeks, so I highly recommend, if you have a lean on a certain team going into this weekend, go ahead and get in there early before that edge evaporates, because things change pretty rapidly in the playoff best ball markets. So go ahead, get your feet wet this weekend, and then we'll kind of have some final answers for you, hopefully, next week. But that's going to do it for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Oh, and I would be remiss to not mention our guy Bryce Danielson. RotoWire, great content, man. A little bit more behind the scenes. Takes down the DraftKings best, one of the tournaments over there on DraftKings. So big shout out to Bryce.
Yeah, Bryce is actually, I think, OG status for some time. He's been there like I've been at RotoWire long enough that I can't remember entire eras anymore reliably, or at least like they're all out of order in my head. But I feel like Bryce has been there like about as long as you, John.
Not long after. Like I think
Okay.
he came on like 2016, and I started in like 14, so like pretty
Okay.
early on in the day. 16 or 15 is when he would have started, and does a lot of golf stuff for us, does some NFL stuff, and
yeah, imagine how good the golf stuff must be. Any golf interested people listening?
Yes, it's money. Our golf guys, I think, generally are.
Oh yeah, they got a fleet of really good ones, don't they?
Yeah, it's crazy how strong that department is. But either way, big shout out,
There you
Bryce.
go, Bryce. Yeah.
Yeah, and anyone else that won their leagues, or if we helped anyone cash in best ball this year, hats off to you. But that's going to do it for us here on the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. If you want to check out our content behind the paywall, you can get a free trial for RotoWire at rotowire.com/pod. We'll catch you